All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Ricciuti. I am the manager for Outreach and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives here at the Colleague Career Education Center. This is our International Insights for International Alums event. So welcome to all of you who are here in person. Thank you for being here. And also whoever's online, I can't see you. I don't know if you're going to say hi or not, but we do have a student in the back who's going to be asking questions eventually. So this event should take about an hour. We've got a few prepared questions, but at the end, there will be time for students in the audience as well as online. If you have additional questions for our panelists, you're welcome to ask them. Okay. So panelists, if you wouldn't mind starting, I do not care what your order is, by introducing yourself and what your current positions are, as well as what year you graduated and from what college or what school.
Sure. Yeah, I can start. Hi, everyone. My name is Beatrice Bichelli. I graduated from the SFS in 2019 as an undergrad. And I'm now a senior associate at a corporate investigations firm here in DC called Forward Risk.
Hi, I'm Luca. I graduated last December 2021 from the SFS, majoring in STIA, and now I work at Family Health International, also called FHI 360, and I'm a research assistant.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathy. I graduated in 2018 as well. I actually recognize some of you guys here from the career fair that we just hosted recently. I was in the MSB. I transferred to the MSB my sophomore year, and right now I work for NERA Economic Consulting.
I'm Philippos, originally from Athens, Greece. I graduated in 2016, so an eternity ago. I work at a small foreign policy think tank called Center for European Policy Analysis, or CEPA, as the chief of staff there. And I also spent 4 years before that at another think tank, foreign policy think tank called the Brookings Institution. Very happy to be here.
All right. If you all could please share a bit about your career stories and how you were able to land a career outside your home country after Georgetown.
Sure. Since I graduated early, I kind of had a difficult time finding a full-time position. And I didn't, even though I graduated with a major called Science and Technology, I did not get STEM OPT. So I only had a year in the US. So I kind of shifted gears after looking for months for something that would start in January. I shifted to applying to internships and traineeships and fellowships. So I started off doing an internship at FHI 360, part-time, and then also another one at a different organization, and they're called Results for Development. So both are development organizations that do that work in education, health, nutrition. So kind of that well-rounded organization, or typical organization that works all around the world. And then they offered me a position as a research assistant in June, but kind of knowing that they would not be able to sponsor because that's not what a lot of NGOs do. So I got pretty lucky. Yeah.
I'll go next. I've worked at NERA since I graduated. But I also did an internship. I used OPT summer of junior year, and I worked at an investment bank. I find that a lot of the really typical kinds of firms will sponsor, but smaller firms won't. So I remember it was a little difficult because there are some things that I wanted to apply to that I couldn't, because even though they align with my interests, it's not something that probably would have worked out in the long term. I am very happy with my career at NERA, but I went through the normal recruiting cycle here, as I'm sure you guys are all going through right now. So I don't really have a unique story in that sense.
Yeah, so I got my current job right after graduation, doing pretty much what you guys are doing here tonight. I met the founder of my company at a Jumpstart event on campus. In January, so we kind of connected, we did an informational interview, I went through the process and got the job. My story is a little bit unique because my firm at the time was a startup. We were I think I was number 10 or 11 to join. And I was also lucky because the founder that I mentioned that I met was an international. So there were a lot of hoops that I didn't have to go through as much in terms of like educating them about my status. And like they knew the deal. They liked me, they took me on, and they were able to support me in that immigration process. But yeah, it was by talking to people. I think a lot of our backgrounds as internationals sometimes don't translate as well in an application form. So I realized pretty early on in my job search process that I would have to overcome my fear of talking to people, and it worked out.
I majored in political economy and minored in math. Big mistake, because that gives you only 1 year of OPT. And had I known back then, I would have done it a bit differently. But I graduated early. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing with my life. I was applying to hundreds of jobs, as a lot of folks, I assume, have done here. Many interviews. And as soon as you get to the point of, do you require sponsorship or not, then it's a different game. And in the vast majority of cases, you just, the reality is that you can't really proceed. So I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But I also did 2 internships using my OPT, my 1 year of OPT, just making the most out of my time here in the US. And I knew that one of those 2 organizations, if I had any chance of getting the sponsorship afterwards, it would be through one of those 2 organizations that knew me, had tested me, and had sort of invested some time in me. And even though both were NGOs, think tanks, and traditionally they don't really sponsor, I ended up getting the sponsorship with one of them, being at the right time at the right place. They had a vacancy that they needed someone with a similar background, so it worked out. But it is very hard, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs, but there can be ups as well. It's just an additional struggle that I guess all of your international students, any exceptions? No? Okay. It's an additional struggle that all of you have to go through, that most of your peers who are not international students will probably not even understand, but it is worth it. And there are ways, if you really want it. So it's too long.
No, not at all. Not at all. So a lot of you have talked on the path on how to find the visa status. What advice would you have given yourself in college, or wish you had received, about the job search process and finding folks who would support you in finding that visa?
Okay. I think this is gonna sound like really bad advice. If someone had told me this, I'd be like, nah. But in my experience, putting immigration as the sole guide in your job search is very stressful and very frustrating. And it doesn't work, because I did it and I was very stressed out and just going to roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And I thought that like being sponsored was like, if I only had that, then I'm set. I found myself in a situation before I took this job that I received an offer from a different firm that would sponsor me. And it was really rare. No one had told me this before. They were like, we're going to give you the job and we're going to sponsor you. That's it. And I said no to that job because I realized that I wouldn't be happy. And it took me getting that thing that I thought was the only thing that I wanted to realize that no, like I actually have to wake up every day and like do this job. So of course, treat it as a very important factor in your search, because it is like, it's kind of an existential thing. You have to be here if you want to be here. But at the same time, I guess, try to keep some perspective in terms of, you also need to do what's best for you professionally, do things that you're interested in, and be strategic about it. But I guess try to focus on things that you can control and not this thing that you absolutely cannot. Treat it with respect, with importance, but don't put it as the only thing that you're looking for. would be my advice.
I would wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. I would say, it is not 100% under your control, no matter how much, or how hard you try. And you have to be fine with it. You have to be fine with some element of uncertainty. You have to be flexible. At the same time, for those who are interested in staying longer in this country, which is, by the way, it's not, I don't think it's the promised land in any way possible, but it is a great way to grow in your career, especially in specific fields than most of our home countries. I'm originally from Greece, as I said, so in a lot of fields, it makes 100% sense. As many others I see in the crowd are from countries where it makes much more sense to be in this country rather than your home countries as you make your first professional steps. But I would say that it is, there are ways of maximizing the chances right now, whether you're a freshman or a senior. There are ways of maximize your chances of getting that sponsorship a year after graduation or 3 years after graduation. For those of you who have STEM or studying a STEM field, at the same time, like it's not 100% in your own hands, right? You may have a great job, a great employer that you absolutely love, who wants to sponsor you, who tries 3 times to sponsor you if you have a STEM field. I know examples of people who have tried 3 times in a row and have not been selected in the lottery. And it is what it is. So personal advice, you have to be flexible with that. If you want to stay, think strategically, how do I maximize my chances right now, whether I'm a freshman or I'm a senior, through internships, through connections with alums, through connections and strong relationships with some of your professors, which a lot of people often underestimate. But at the same time, what would be the plan B? Because you need to have a plan B for at some point down the line.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I was gonna say that, yeah, I think when I graduated, I thought that the 1 year was such an awkward time to like find something that would be like a full-time job. But then I realized I started thinking about what I want out of my time in the US, and especially post-graduation, and like the skills that I want to learn, the people I want to meet, and also realizing that working for a bit in the US does not mean that you cannot find a job somewhere else. So you can create like global connections, especially in like an NGO where kind of everyone knows each other. And you can meet so many people, you can network all the time. And I think if you focus while you're studying on like certain skills that you could build that could, impress your employer, that they would be looking for, that no other American would have, that then they could sponsor you. That's also like one strategy to go about it. I took a lot of statistics and computer science, so that definitely helped. And then just like being very confident in yourself and like knowing that you like speak multiple languages and that you were like flexible and like have lived in a lot of places, and those are such valuable skills. So I think just like being confident in like expressing that to your employer, and telling them how valuable you are. I think that's something that I've grown in a lot, and I was not good at before, but now I realize oh, okay, actually that's what people do here in the US too, right? They like constantly fight for themselves. But I'm rambling a bit, I'm forgetting what I want to say after. Go ahead.
I think I've had a pretty vanilla experience compared to the other analysts here, but most of the companies that I applied to were really big companies that had global offices as well. And so I think my experience was very different. I knew where I was going to work November of my senior year, because the recruiting cycle that I went through was more like in line with what the business school, the MSB kids go through. But in that process, a lot of the bigger companies, even if you don't get sponsorship after like a certain amount of time, a lot of them, because they have global offices, will offer something called an L1 visa, which means that you go to a different country, you work there for a year, and then you can come back to the United States and transfer. So I think the benefit of working at a big company is that there's a little bit more flexibility, and it's like a little bit more stable. And I definitely think a piece of advice I would have given myself is to just chill out a little bit, because I was really stressed out. I applied to like hundreds of jobs, as I'm sure you guys did as well. My family lives in Saudi Arabia, and there was no way that I was going to go back to Saudi to work. So for me, it was like a really dire situation, and I just stressed myself out so much that I didn't really enjoy my senior year. So that is the piece of advice that I would give. Like, try to compartmentalize your job search if you can, and just like have fun with being here, because this sounds morbid. It might be your last year. So yeah.
Throughout your time here at Georgetown, were there resources that you used that were very helpful, or experiences that you had that were exceptionally helpful for your path? Or were there resources that you wish you had known about sooner? And I know, like, to some extent, this might be self-aggrandizing since this is the Career Center, but you don't have to say the Career Center, I promise. But it would be nice.
I really took advantage of our alumni network. I was only denied an informational interview once, and I spoke to a lot of people on LinkedIn, on like Ahoya Gateway, whatever you guys have now. People are usually more than willing to talk, especially about themselves. And it will give you some insight, really. I think for me, one of the things was to, like, one of the things that I learned during my process was to like think strategically about industries, but also keep an open mind. When I got into Georgetown, you know, typical SFS kid, I thought I was going to work at the UN. And I'm working with investigative due diligence with hedge funds and private equity and law firms. It's very different than the UN. And I had no idea this industry even existed when I started my senior year. Like, it was kind of like, you don't know what you don't know. And it was by talking to people that I was kind of introduced to a lot of it. So there are structures on campus that can help you. Like I mentioned, the Ahoya Gateway Handshake, the Career Center, but I'm sure you guys have a LinkedIn. LinkedIn is powerful. So I would definitely, look for people that went to Georgetown, or look for people that work in a company that you want to work at, and send them a message. I was always very happy when I did that.
People indeed love to talk about themselves, so take them up on that. And I would, again, I could not agree more with what you said earlier about enjoying, especially for those of you who are seniors and might not have figured out your steps for next year. Just enjoy it. Like, I guarantee you that every single one of us would give everything to be a senior again for a week. So they make sure that you take full advantage of what this incredible ecosystem has to offer. I would add to that, obviously the alumni network, which is extremely strong. Again, something that I said earlier, your professors, who we often, I'll include myself, think of as kind of just people who are there, who are, just there to teach and to kind of give us bad grades. They can be extremely resourceful in your job searches, depending on the industry, of course. But not everyone. Most people don't take full advantage of how incredible mentors and just kind of guides those people can be. I also had no idea what a think tank was when I was graduating from Georgetown. Absolutely no idea. I was planning on, working at an international organization or consulting firm or finance. I had absolutely no idea what a think tank was. And 6.5 years later, I'm in this, really interesting kind of very DC focused sector, that I was not imagining myself in when I was a senior. So just be open to the unexpected. If you are choosing between internships, if you've already had a consulting internship, for example, and I think you have another one, do something else. Get another kind of experience. There's no better time to test a different industry, a different organization, a different field than now. And it is equally important to realize that you don't like something as it is that you do like something. You are in this experimentation phase, and that's the best way to do it. And that kind of goes a little bit outside the realm of how do you navigate the job search as international students. But I think it's particularly useful to go through that exercise as early on as possible. Study abroad if you have the choice, you have the opportunity to do so. Learn a new language. Take classes that perhaps do not make sense based on your current path. I was lucky enough in my last semester to take a class with Madeleine Albright.
That's amazing.
Who I'll admit, I barely knew who she was when I was entering the course. I knew the name. I was like, oh, okay. And it was life-changing for me because it kind of opened this new world in front of me of foreign policy that I had no idea that I had. I was not even in the SFS, and there you go. So just do that kind of thing. Do things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone, whether it's through a kind of different class, whether it's through an internship, through a study abroad experience. I think it can be life-changing. And I have no idea what the question was. So
You answered it, so you're good.
Yeah, no, that's good. You need me to repeat the question. Okay.
No, I think it's okay. I was also going to talk about Hoya Gateway. I definitely use that a lot. I think just to start off, I would ask, if things during classes or during your reading would come up, they'd be like, wait, actually, I'm interested in this. It would be cool to talk to your professors about it, and then they can kind of direct you to like, oh, these organizations work on this, and maybe they know someone. But then you could start up looking at those organizations, those places, especially through Hoya Gateway and then through LinkedIn. I think having all of those informational interviews, even though everyone says that all the time, they help so much, because I was also someone that I'm from France and Belgium, and like, you don't do any public speaking and you do not say your opinion. So it's a big thing here in the US, and I feel like everyone else seems very intimidating in the way that they can present themselves and show up to an interview. To me, that was a big thing where I was like, okay, I can practice not only just listening to someone talk about themselves, which is also important, but kind of intervening and asking questions, but also talking about your classes and talking about skills that you have and talking about experiences, and then realizing that with every person, they will notice something like, oh, wait, you can do that, or you've done this. And that kind of shows that, oh, that's an interesting skill that I have. Sometimes miss those soft skills or experiences that you had that you don't think are important, but actually are. So that helped in that way, but also helped definitely in the types of positions that I could apply to. I had no idea what do I even apply to, especially in NGOs. There's so many different. There's the programmatic side, there's the research side, there's just there's the admin side, there's HR. There's just so many things that you could be doing. So it's good to know what are entry-level positions, where are those, and then just knowing that. That was just super helpful. And I think having kind of those strategic entryways definitely helped in saving time. I wish I would have started talking more to people from the beginning instead of just sending out applications. And I definitely started just every organization I applied to, I would talk to someone and be a little bit annoying. Have them give you another person to talk to, and also tell them I applied to the job, and so just pressure a little bit. And I think that definitely helped. They'll just know your name, and it's great. Yeah. That's the advice I have.
My favorite question to ask at the end of an informational interview is like, who else can I talk to?
Yeah, sometimes people will send you another link to apply. A lot of companies have like internal referral systems. So if you happen to speak to them before you apply, they'll give you like a really special little URL that you can use, and then it goes to a different docs.
I just wanted to jump in on the flip side of reaching out to people. I took a lot more informational interviews when I first started working, but now I'm very busy because I'm doing a part-time MBA and working full-time. So I actually haven't answered a lot of the LinkedIn Employee Gateway requests that people have sent me. However, I would say don't be discouraged if someone doesn't answer you, because a lot of the time, either they're just busy or they're just like not looking at their emails, honestly, because a lot of my friends don't check their Georgetown emails anymore, so they don't get the Employee Gateway emails to begin with. So I would say don't be discouraged. The other thing that I used at Georgetown was I went to a lot of the career fairs, and I think they were really helpful. Also, like what everyone else mentioned, to just show me what else was out there, and just talking to other people helped me like think about what I wanted to talk about when I did interviews with firms. Yeah.
Can I make a quick
Yeah.
follow-up comment on what Luca and Beatrice said earlier? I mentioned earlier applying to hundreds of jobs, which I did, and some of us may have done so as well. I remember spending a whole day sending, I don't know how many, tens of applications, and being like, why do I not get a response? And then I realized, now that I'm, on the receiving end, it takes less than 10 seconds for someone to, once they look at a resume, a cover letter, to be able to tell if the applicant knows what they're talking about and has done the research about the position, the organization, the industry. It takes, I would say, less than 5 seconds to be even more provocative. But if you are, choosing between sending one well thought out, well prepared application or 10 that are not as well prepared, do that one and focus all your energy on that one application. Write the cover letter and, read everything that you can find about the job, the division, the organization, study it closely. Trust me, the people who will read it know what they're looking for. So you should know what they're looking for, and you want to make it as clear as possible that you have the right background, the right experience, what they're looking for. It is a make or break kind of point that sometimes it's not easily understood from the outside, but it can really, really make a difference. So it's quality over quantity when it comes to applying to actually submitting an application, and especially that cover letter, which in most cases it is so very important in showing who you are and why you're the right person or why you have the right background for the job.
On a more practical note, now that you all have been through the process, in some cases are actually reviewing applications of others who are applying, when would you recommend international students share their visa process or their visa status with an employer in their job search process?
I'll just start because mine's very straightforward. Most of the companies that I applied to asked for it on the application. So it was right away. I think the others have more unconventional experiences, so I'll let them talk.
Yeah, I mean, don't lie. Don't misrepresent your status. I think it's kind of a trap. I heard stories of like folks that were almost there, and then they were like, oh, by the way, like there's something you should know. It's just like a waste of time for you and for the company. So if they ask you, you should tell them. But that being said, I think if you have that flexibility, if you have the opportunity of like being more intentional about when to talk about this, if at all possible, I would maybe say, when they already like you, like maybe not in the first one, maybe when there's some sort of, when you're a little bit more advanced in the process. But it's really tricky. I think it depends. In my experience, when I felt like it was important, I discussed it right away. when I felt that I could, kind of delay it a little bit. I'm sorry. I think there's no right answer to it. But be mindful of how you, I guess that's the most interesting thing. Like, rehearse how you say this and don't be apologetic about it. Luca was, talking about how, a lot of our backgrounds are, a great asset to a team. So there is a difference between, framing this as a, by the way, I'm so sorry, there's something you should know. And hey, this is something that you should know about me, about my candidacy, but I am amazing and you should get to know me better. So I guess regardless of when you do it, have that kind of framing ready to tackle that, because the other person might not know. Americans don't really know what's going on with immigration. They have no reason to. So sometimes it's up to you to educate them a little bit and not kind of scare them away from the process.
Again, being that advocate for yourself.
Yeah, because it's not that hard to sponsor people. Honestly, it's risky because there's a lot of unknowns, but it's not expensive. It's not, it really depends. And I think some people might just not know enough about it. And it's your job as an applicant to advocate for yourself in a smart way.
I'm conflicted about this. As someone who years ago got out of the metro for a final round interview, I think it was the 6th round interview with the CEO of the organization, COO, to get an email saying, and it was the last conversation was basically like the official, and it was got an email saying, oh, unfortunately we cannot proceed, we just realized that you're not a US citizen. And it's not a great email to get when you're out of the metro and ready to go to your interview. I think it is, looking back, I think the earlier you share that, the better. I'm not saying, obviously if you have an application where you're asked, do you require sponsorship or will you in the future, you should absolutely be honest about it. And I also think that if you are not asked, the official application, and you have a first round interview at the very end, it's obviously not it should not be the very first thing that you share with your future interviewer, but it might be a good time to do that at the very end of the first conversation, the second conversation, in a very transparent and direct way, as Beatrice was saying. But I think the earlier the better, both for you and for them, just because you can avoid some unfortunate, unpleasant surprises.
I just wrapped my head around 6. If we're like a 5th round,
I have
just get it over with already.
Yeah,
it happened
gracious.
to me too. And it's very
just to be clear, and that's the weird part. It was actually with the organization that ended up sponsoring me after all, but it was for a position that could not, to sponsor someone, you need you cannot sponsor an international student for any kind of positions. There needs to be the organization, the company needs to make a case that Beatrice has certain skills that an American does not have, and you can do that with certain language skills, certain quantitative skills, certain kind of elements of your background, but you cannot do it for any position. It needs to be, your background needs to match with requirements and the elements of that position.
Yeah. Fortunately for me, I did not have to do all these rounds of interviews. NGOs don't really typically do that. They have 1 or 2. So I would definitely not, if they would ask to sometimes in your application, definitely don't lie then, but I wouldn't say it until either the end of the interview when kind of the logistics come up, where obviously they ask you when can you start, and I think there will be a time where you have you have already submitted your OPT application, and so you know your start date, and if they propose something else, you obviously have to tell them that you cannot work then, either has to be later or earlier. Sometimes that will come up then, but mainly I would kind of put in an email afterwards. After knowing that, I can see like, okay, yeah, maybe they liked me or they didn't, whatever. But just like in your thank you email, also pointing out like, I do have a visa, and just for your information, and this is what it means. This is my start date, my end date. I might require sponsorship, but I can like offer my work for you for a year. So, do with that information you wish. But yeah, I think like as you put it, not like just ending it with like, I require sponsorship, but just saying like, I'm on a visa, so this means this, and this. So it's way more like practical, not scary, like you said, yeah. Because most people don't know. But I also got lucky as in like almost my entire team I work with now are non-American. But they all became, they're legal here now because they married an American. So just like kind of useless for me every time I ask them, like, so how do I stay here? Because they're like, well, there's really easy option. I'm like,
Yeah. What I learned too is that like
Just to like look peaceful.
I was just gonna add, I realized that asking people to sponsor you is a really tall ask if you haven't been hired. So what I would do is to say something along the lines of, blah, 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 here's the situation, here's what that means. Would you be open to considering sponsoring me after I start? Because then the way that this gets processed is, oh, if she's good, if, yeah, we'll be open to considering. And I know this is not ideal for us because we want to know for sure, but this knowing for sure is really, really hard to get from a prospective employer. So I guess the way that I try to do it when I was looking was to be a little bit more like broad and open, and they understood what I was trying to say. But I felt like that was an easier ask at the interview stage. And I got better, like more success with that.
and ultimately you're not actually asking them from the start. Like you don't need to be sponsored, right? Like all you're asking is that they offer you a job essentially for a year. And then afterwards you can see, that's the way I took it. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's exactly your point. I've been thinking, what is the smoothest way of doing that and when? And I think, a smooth way might be through, an internship, which you can do legally and without any issues, right? And you do a great job. And then in the majority of cases, if you do a great job, if there's a fit with you and the company, they might ask you to, join the next summer or immediately afterwards, depending on the circumstances. And that is the right time after you have proven yourself, perhaps, to do that. I know it doesn't work in every single case, but for those of you who still have a few years to go and are thinking of internship opportunities, again, think strategically. Is this a company that I would be willing and happy to work at long term? B, is it a company that that sponsors in general and might be a potential opportunity for me to stay longer in this country, assuming that is desired? This is something that, again, you might be able to do it more smoothly after you've done an internship and before that, conversation comes up, just as an idea.
All right. So for folks here in person, Ian, do we have any questions in the chat? Okay. So I've got one more question. So if y'all want to think about specific questions you have, folks who are online, please go ahead and put that in the chat. Ewan in the back will read them aloud for us. But for the panelists, knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently while you were at Georgetown? Hindsight being 2020.
I was going to say date an American.
No, promise we're not sponsored by Tinder. Please.
Or don't.
Or don't. No.
It's complicated.
I actually did marry an American.
Oh,
I do have to say, I actually did the paperwork on my own. My company said that they're lawyers. I would have to pay them $10,000 to do it. And then if I found my own lawyer, they wouldn't actually look through all of the paperwork. They would just like review it. So I did it all on my own. But I finally received the green card, like about 2 or 3 months ago. So yeah, marrying an American is definitely the fastest way. To staying here. But I was on a visa for a very long time. My company worked with me throughout the entire process. I actually had conversations with my boss on asking, so I'm a Canadian citizen, which means my situation is like a little bit unique because we are able to work here under the TN visa. It still has to be related to your major. So I had some issues last year because the government no longer thought my position aligned with my major. So they requested more evidence and I had to kind of prove to them that I should be allowed to stay on a TN visa. But I actually like went to my boss and asked her if I could be sponsored under H-1B, which is a lot more flexible because you can travel outside of the country on H-1B. On a lot of other visas, it's really risky, which sucks because if you have family abroad and you can only see them by going home, you can't go home for a while. The answer was no, so I still got married instead. But it doesn't hurt to ask, especially after you've worked somewhere for a little while. There are like options. And if something iffy happens with your visa, like don't panic. Hopefully you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think we all talked about just like enjoying your senior year, not making it the center of your existence. And kind of, yeah, just try to be as strategic as possible. Like, I think there's one way of, obviously when you have no idea what you want to do, it's very different. But if you have a major that you chose and like you kind of know what you want to get out of your year after Georgetown, think strategic about how you can get that and then spend that time on doing that, and like don't go crazy and just think about like what you want and what you want to experience and don't stress too much. But obviously that changes very, very much like considering like if you have a home to go back to, or you know, like what your major is. So I don't want to give that advice to everyone.
I don't know if I would add anything that we haven't said yet. You know, make connections. Don't be scared to tap into your network, into your professor's network, into the friend of the friend on LinkedIn that you saw. And you're absolutely right. Like, enjoy your time at Georgetown. It might lead you to a job, even, you know, like you just like never know. Not that you've socialized because of that, but there's only so much that you can control about all of this, and it's important that you're healthy and happy and enjoying your time here in the process.
How many of you are undergrads here? Is anyone not an undergrad?
This is all undergrad.
This is all undergrad. Grad
Oh.
students. Great. 2 grad students. For those of you who are not for the 2 of you, but for everyone else, I mean, no, I'm kind of reflecting on some of the things we just talked about. I mean, there are ways of coming back to this country if, you know, that's what you really, really want. And if it doesn't work out immediately after Georgetown, the L1 path is probably the easiest one. If you work at a major international organization with offices in the US and abroad, you spend a few years abroad. I think in most cases 1 or 2 years. Just one is a requirement. I know companies that usually ask for 2 or more, but and then you very easily, in quotation marks, very easily can come back to the United States on the L1 visa. The only restriction there is that you have to work for that employer. You're attached to that employer for as long as you are on the L visa, and until you hopefully get the green card sponsorship, which may take a few years. But it is a great way. Another way, the reason why I asked, who here is an undergrad, is that, for those of you who are considering grad school down the line, that's another possibility of coming back to. I'm not saying do it for the sole sake of, getting another year of OPT or another 3 years of OPT, but it is a potential opportunity to come back. I'm also a big believer in getting as much work experience as possible between undergrad and grad school. That's a whole completely different topic, but make the most out of that 1 year of OPT or 3 years of OPT, and good things can come out of it. And that's, I wasn't able to find a job when I was finishing my undergrad at Georgetown. I did a couple of internships. One of them led to a sponsorship. And even then, by the way, even if you finish your OPT, your 1 or 3 years of OPT, and there's no immediate opportunity at your company, or you haven't found something else, don't give up, because you can go back to your home country, and then a couple of months later, or even years later, there might be a relevant opportunity. And because they know you and because they work with you, they can hire you back. I had a 5-month gap. I had to go back home and then found an opportunity that I applied to, and because they knew me, they hired me and sponsored me. So it's not, there are opportunities of coming back, even if your OPT has ended, or even if you're out of the country for some other reason.
So I know we have one question online.
Yeah, great. So this is from Chrissy. She's asking, so hi, I'm a junior in the MSB, and I wanted to ask whether it is a good idea to graduate a semester early, and whether this will significantly decrease my chances of obtaining visa sponsorship through the lottery system. I have a junior summer internship at an investment bank, and I'm hoping to return full-time. So would my early graduation possibly affect my offer?
I feel like I can answer this pretty quickly. No, it doesn't affect anything. Yeah, especially if you already have a return offer, it will not be affected.
I graduated a year early, and even though I would absolutely not recommend it, because you don't get to enjoy, your time at Georgetown as much as you would, I don't think it has any implications on your, employment prospects post Georgetown.
I just have a question follow up to the grad school one. I know maybe some of us here are thinking about going to grad school right after undergrad, and also in between like job search, just going find a job after graduation, but job search is very uncertain process, but you have to prepare for grad school at the same time. So I just want to know, how did you guys navigate that kind of choices, or if you have those kind of hesitation between grad school and job search?
I just interviewed 10 people for my company, and I think that a lot of people at my company as well have masters, are older than me, and are several levels below me. So I think in terms of going to grad school right away, it's definitely a good backup option, but a lot of companies prefer work experience over being in grad school. And in fact, a lot of the positions that I was hiring, the candidates were in grad school, but they were still applying and only being considered for the entry-level position that undergrads, like seniors, are also eligible for. So in terms of really corporate spaces, I would say work experience is more important. But obviously grad school is not a bad thing. It's your own choice.
I think I took it as in I only had a year to be here, so might as well just figure out grad school later and just get the experience now. And then if I have to leave the country, it's great, have to pay less for grad school. So let's go to grad school in Europe. So not bad.
I think for this group, for international students, I cannot stress enough how valuable that 1 or 3 years of OPT can be, and how many doors they can open for you. I always recommend, and I know it's a little bit more of a provocative position here, but oh my God, work experience over any degree with any grades any day. It makes a huge difference. And again, I'll be a little bit provocative here, but think of the numbers. Say that you are applying to, some jobs and grad school programs, the best grad school program. I don't know, say that you're an SFS student and want to go to MSFS, the best program for international affairs in a country. Based on just the probability, the numbers, the number of people who get admitted every year at the top international relations program in the country, which is Georgetown, you have what, 500, I may making this up, 300, 400, 500 people who are admitted to the program, right?
MSFS is like 100.
100 who end up going, so maybe a few more who get admitted.
They say it's the oldest, the smallest, the best.
Sure, okay.
I didn't go there, by the way.
100. 100.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, but you have 100, 200, 300 people who get admitted. Whereas for, the top company in a specific field, you have 1, 2, 5 positions and hundreds of people who apply for them. So it is so much more competitive and so much harder, and especially harder for international students to get that job. That even if you do those two things in parallel, which I think it makes perfect sense to do so, based simply purely on numbers, it is so much easier to get into a really good grad school program than to get into a good, to find a really good job that satisfies you. So a lot of people end up giving up. Like they send a few job applications, but they end up giving up. And I would highly encourage you not to do so. To just, go the extra mile, send more applications, prepare them even better. And, I know it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and mental capacity, but it does pay off.
So I know we have more questions. However, I do want to be respectful of panelists' time. We're almost at time. So if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly or anyone in the Career Center. I'm not going to speak for the panelists. You all are welcome to say whether or not, but I don't want to pressure you on like a public forum to say that. We will absolutely work to get you those answers. But just to wrap up, a few themes that I noticed for you all to take home, and panelists, please stop me at any moment if I make a mistake. Your visa definitely does not define who you are as a human. Make sure to enjoy your time and not center that. Remember to be an advocate for yourself. As the American sitting at this table, I learned a lot today. I won't lie, and I am sure there are people who've never asked this question before or have never been asked to consider this before. And then be open to possibilities as well as using your resources and connections. So, I think I missed panelists. Is that a good summation? Excellent. Well, panelists, thank you so much for your time. Everyone who is here in person and online, thank you so much for spending the hour with us. Like I said, my name is Alex Chudy. I work here at the College Career Center. Please stop by anytime. We are happy to help in any way that we can, or find someone who knows more than we do. So thank you all so much. There's some cookies in the back. We'll see you all soon.
Happy to tag along if anyone has.
Yeah, same. I mean,